All right. Hello, everybody. Our speaker today is a Harvard-trained emotional intelligence expert, international award-winning coach, and the author of the Balanced Life Blueprint. As the CEO of Joy Discovered, she helps leaders create engaged teams that deliver remarkable service. Before founding Joy Discovered, she developed service optimization programs for Fortune Global 500 executives and taught mindfulness to clients like the NFL Combine and behavioral health centers. She's committed to conquering mediocrity and creating a world where people live and lead with connection, courage, and joy. Please welcome Sara Mueller.
Thank you, Pam. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Hello. That's a good hello, a good response from 5 days of conferencing. So this has been a great event. Would you agree? Yes, absolutely. And extra brownie points for all of you for showing up for the second to last session after 5 jam-packed days of content. Kudos to you. So I don't have as many funny one-liners as Susan O'Malley. I probably don't have any compared to her humor that she got to share with us a few days ago. But I do have an incredible panel that's here with me today. They have a wealth of wisdom and expertise around emotional intelligence and club leadership that they are going to share with all of us. So let's just jump right into it. And I'm going to ask the panel to introduce themselves and also to share why this topic of EQ is so important to you. And why don't we start at the end with you, Scott, please?
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thank you, Sarah, for inviting me to speak. I'm not one that shares feelings and things like that. It's really tough for me to do that. So I'm going to try to relate to you a little bit about why this was so important for me. I'm currently the general manager of the Quarry Beach Club and community down in Naples, Florida. It's an amazing opportunity for me. We just went through about a $20 million renovation, closed for 2 years. I'll talk a little bit about how this has helped me build a team. And in my life, I've gone through a transformation in about the last 4 to 5 years. The old way of managing, the old way of speaking to people and understanding people, I had to change. My board came to me and said, Scott, you need help. You need help, otherwise you won't have the position that you have. And I'll tell you, through Sarah's coaching for the last year or so, I've really made some strides forward to make sure that I was a better leader moving forward using the EQ.
Thank you, Scott. And Kelly, will you introduce yourself, please?
Hello, everyone. So Kelly Grabowski, currently GM at Sarasota National on the west coast of Florida. I also have had the pleasure of experiencing Sarah's session. So if you have not, you're in for a treat because she's touting us, but we will tout the praise right back to her. Sat through one of Sarah's sessions, and I love that we see a lot of women out here. EQ is a topic for all genders, but I feel like sometimes as women, we tend to put ourselves into boxes that we think are convenient for other people, right? Where you grow up learning to please people, be a good girl, be a good friend, be a good leader, be a good manager. I am a recovering people pleaser, and through EQ, that journey has helped me along. And I think going through the session, Sarah will help kind of bring all that together for us. I think without giving you my bio, hopefully you've read it. If not, it's on there. I like to use words now like resilient, thoughtful, loyal. I'm an EQ student. We will never master this. I think it's a process, and every day we get better and better at it. And I think it's our job today to have these kind of difficult conversations and put ourselves out there for all of you guys, because I will tell you, not too many years ago, I sat in that audience and would never have raised my hand and would never have thought I'd be up on stage because I didn't think I had anything important to say. So thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Kelly. And one of the things that I wanted to comment on that you mentioned is being the recovering people pleaser, because that is a trend that I hear a lot in the private club and the hospitality space. And it's one of the reasons that you're all so great at your job. You know, you're pleasing people, you're providing a great employee and member experience. But when that pendulum swings to the other side and it becomes detrimental to ourself and our own management of ourself, which we'll talk about, that's when we get into trouble. So we want to embrace the people pleasing that serves us, but step away from or create boundaries around it when it doesn't. And so Jeff, will you introduce yourself, please?
Thank you, Sarah. Welcome, everyone. Happy International Women's Day.
That's right, it is. Yes, yes.
My name is Jeff Paiva. I'm the General Manager, Chief Operating Officer at Needham Golf Club in Needham, Massachusetts, just outside of Boston. I am a recovering something or other too, but it's a recovering perfectionist. And I think a lot of you can relate to that because that's why we're in the jobs we're in. My EQ journey is always ongoing. It's been about 2 to 3 years, and to Scott's point, the old way of managing is dead, and we have to manage and treat people differently if we're going to continue to be leaders in this industry. So I'm happy you're all here. This is an incredibly important topic, and it's going to make you all better managers if you follow this type of journey. So looking forward to it. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. As we head into this discussion of emotional intelligence, just raise your hand, please, if you have heard about this topic before. You've probably been in sessions already this week around emotional intelligence. Okay, so this isn't something that's brand new for anyone in the audience, but I want to make sure that we're all on the same page as to what emotional intelligence is. Very simply put, it is our ability to communicate with and influence others. It's our ability to understand and manage ourselves so that we can understand and manage others. It's our ability to manage our emotions so that they don't later hijack our behavior that we have to spend then a lot of time and energy cleaning up. And there are 4 pillars of emotional intelligence: self-awareness, self-management, others awareness, and relationship management. We're going to dive into each of those. Before we do that, though, we are curious as to where you are on your own emotional intelligence journey. And so we have a poll for you, and we've had a couple technical difficulties, so I'm not going to be able to pull the results up on the screen. But if you could please scan that QR code or go to slido.com, and then when it says enter in the event ID, it's 881. And we'd like to know where you are on your own emotional intelligence journey. And so I'll give you a minute to answer that question. Where are you on your own journey of EQ here in this room? So far for the panel, since I'm keeping you informed here, we've got about almost 50% saying a moderate EQ, 1% saying very high EQ, about 30% saying high EQ, and about 4% saying low EQ. Give it maybe 30 more seconds to see if we have any more votes. Okay, so we're ending out here with half of the room saying about moderate, and then 31% saying high EQ. Okay, so what I'd like to have you first explain to us then, Jeff, is IQ versus EQ. When and how did you make that shift, and what does that mean to you?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, my club journey started when I was 12 years old, started caddying, and worked at a club in high school and became a golf professional, and did the whole golf side of the business, and then, transitioned into club management and F&B and had to learn all of that, and then eventually up to the general manager position. While you're doing all that, you're learning all the technical skills and all the things that you need to know in this business. And there's so many technical skills and different things that you need to know. And I think for me, I thought that when I learned the technical skills and I had all that knowledge, then I could be a good manager. And as I got into my first general manager position, which was at a city club north of Boston, fine dining, so very technical with everything that you need to do in fine dining. I thought I was a good manager because I had all these technical skills and I knew how to do everything, and I was able to talk to the members and really develop these relationships. Well, I thought I was a good manager. Well, it turns out I was not a good manager because I had no emotional intelligence at all. I didn't know how to talk to people. I was very reactive. I'm a recovering perfectionist. So what happens there is that you expect everybody else to be at the level that you're at, and that's just not realistic. And over the journey of trying to figure out how to be a good manager, I found EQ. And when you start to realize that things don't have to be perfect, and that talking to people and really listening to people is really your power, and where you can become a really good manager. And over the last few years, I've been able to, kind of develop these skills, and I'm so much more of a better manager than when I had just the technical skills. And I actually think the pendulum's shifting to Scott's point, that the technical skills are important, but you're gonna be a better leader and a better manager if you have those, what people call soft skills. But really, it's EQ, and it's been a journey and a long journey, and it will never stop happening. It'll always be a continuing journey. I had a quick story. I took this is about a year ago, after I had been at my current club for a year, and I had started some of this and started to see some results. I took my F&B team to a training in New England with a whole bunch of other clubs, so a lot of colleagues in the room. And we all sat at tables of 10 or whatever, and the trainer asked each person to go around and introduce themselves and ask why they were here. So it went around our table, and right before it got to me was my toughest server, the one that never tells you anything, is always mad, is always just like, right? And she stood up, and she doesn't care, so I'll say her name. She said, my name's Shelby. I'm a server at Needham Golf Club, and I'm here because we love Jeff. And I was like, blown away, because number one, no one's ever said that about me. Number two, this is the last person on earth I thought would say this. And this was in front of all of my colleagues, like all the people that I respect and that I've learned from. And I think when you start to see results like that, it really gets you to be all in on an EQ journey. So.
And I have a quick follow-up question to that, Jeff. How did you know that you weren't managing well? How did you know that you were too technical and functional focused, and that you needed to start embracing EQ? Did you get feedback from someone, or was it, how did you build that self-awareness?
I wasn't happy. I got feedback from my wife. I was not happy. I was not happy at home. I was tired all the time, run down, running myself into the ground, not giving myself a break. I guess the feedback I got was none, and that's bad, because people are not, when people are not talking to you and not telling you that you're, not doing this or not doing that. I mean, I think I got the feedback from myself, and that I didn't feel like myself. I felt run down. I just felt like not a good person, and I knew I needed to make changes, right? And when that happened, and I found this and started that journey and started to see the results, and then that day kind of flipped a switch for me in a lot of ways, and I'll like, that is tattooed in my brain as a memory of like, yeah, this is I'm on the right path, right?
Thank you. And that's such a great point, because if we're going to build a high EQ culture at our club, feedback needs to be a regular piece of the culture for our co-leaders, for our staff, from the membership. And so, you didn't get that, but luckily you found emotional intelligence from your own unhappiness. So thank you for sharing that. So I want to ask you, Scott, now a question. You talked a little bit about the shift that you started to make in your own leadership journey, but what were your preconceived ideas about emotional intelligence and leadership and what it should look like, and how have they changed since being on this EQ journey?
Thank you, Sarah, and I appreciate that. So I've been fortunate. I've been in this industry for 30 years. I started out as a student chapter president up at University of Wisconsin. So literally in 30 years, I've been the president of the Badger chapter. So I must know everything about management, right? 30 years of coming to conferences, things like that. I realized really a hard fact. I mean, I got to the new club about 3 years ago at the Beach Club. And, I had a team there, and boy, I got about a year in, and I'd given everybody raises because they deserved it, and great evaluations, and I was, better employee meals. Boy, they must really like me. I got my employee surveys back, and they were less than 25% approved of my rating. Talk about a wake-up call. I mean, I thought I was doing everything right from the playbook that I had for the last 30 years. Turned out I wasn't listening, I was talking. And one of the things that my preconceived notions, when my board came to me and said, Scott, you need a coach, you need someone to help you understand this blind spot that you have. My ratings as far as owner approvals were great. They were in the 95th percentile. My staff hated me, literally hated me. And so I had to get someone on board that could help me realize what I'm doing wrong and how I can improve that. So when I talked to Sara about what is this EQ stuff you do, and God, here comes somebody else who's gonna make me talk about feelings again. And that's always a fun subject for me. I love feelings. Oh, talk to me more about that all day long. So when Sara and I sat down for a little bit, and she said, Scott, it's about the 4 things on the board. I realized I wasn't showing up for my team. I was doing, look, I've had great experience. I've worked at Wingfoot, and Colin is my mentor, and I've had the best of the best experiences. But when it comes to EQ and showing up for my team, I wasn't doing it. I was showing up for myself to get the glory and to get the pay. And I realized real quickly that I can't do it all. And Sara, through EQ, has helped me understand that you have to understand your feelings. You have to show up for your team every day. And literally, when I look at the 4 things up there on the screen, I'm probably about number 3 right now. I have a long ways to go, but that's really laid out for me a path of how I can accomplish sort of a goal, if you will, of how I can be better at really just being good to myself and being good to my team, because I want to, not because I have to. Hopefully that's
great. And I want to acknowledge you, Scott, because the way that you just shared that answer and talked about your journey and where you're at in the process demonstrates high EQ. And so what an incredible shift for me to have witnessed over the years and for you to share with all of us here in this room. So I want to turn the conversation back to all of you here in this room and ask you to take out your phones and look at your poll again. I'm going to start the next question. What kind of concerns or those preconceived ideas or fears do you have about embracing emotional intelligence even more? So about half of you are already on the EQ journey, but what holds you back from embracing it even more? What are your top concerns? Some of the options that they have are, will I become a pushover? Will performance decline? It requires me to be uncomfortable regularly. I'll have to practice what I preach. And I'm not sure how to improve my own EQ. So I'll give it about 30 more seconds to see what kind of answers we get from the room. What is your top concern with embracing emotional intelligence? So what we're seeing from the audience as of right now is that about 40% is saying they're not sure how to improve it. So we'll definitely get into those areas during our time here today. And then 25% are saying it requires me to be uncomfortable regularly, which is very true. And that actually tees up one of the next questions that I wanted to ask you, Scott. You've said that this process of emotional intelligence does make you uncomfortable regularly. I think we all up here and anyone who's really dived into EQ can relate to that. But talk a little bit about what that means to you and then how you deal with that uncomfortability.
It's fun to have this topic right after the food and beverage, club benchmarking, where it's all about the numbers, all about the data. You can put data on the paper all day long, but if you have a team that's not working with you together, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. So when I talk about being uncomfortable, I have to get out of my office, away from my computer, away from the boardroom, away from, sort of the stuff that you would expect a leader, a CEO maybe to do. I spend more time of my morning and day going out and asking people what they had for dinner last night, asking them how their kids are doing. And for me, that's just not a normal thing. And in the past, it would be kind of precursory. Hey, what'd you do last night? Did you have fun? What'd you have for dinner? Now what I do is I find myself truly involved in what the team members are doing. As all of us, team members are so important as far as once you find the good people, keep them. Find every way you can to keep them. And one of the ways is for you to be engaged. I was always taught, hey, look, work is here. Once you leave the driveway, you do what you want. None of that matters. I'll tell you, I'm really uncomfortable sometimes asking the questions about, hey, you're not having such a good day. Is something happen at work? Is something happen at home? And believe me, the team members will tell you what happened at home last night. And then you feel obligated, not only obligated, but you feel compassion to help them. And I've learned more about my team members by saying, hey, what'd you have last night for dinner? And then that leads to the next question, the next question, the next question. And that's something I didn't do before. It was, hey, you're at work, you're 2 minutes late, let's go, okay? We got something we gotta do. So now all of a sudden, I'm delving into their personal lives outside of work, but it works the other way as well. I have bad days. They ask me, hey, Scott, you're not having a good day. What's up? Believe me, if my team members see that, my board sees that, the owners see that, everybody else sees it, and I can check myself once in a while. So it is really uncomfortable, like I said, talking about feelings, not only with you all, but with the team and just me in general. I wasn't raised that way, but this is one of the things that's really helped lay a pathway for being a better manager.
Thank you. And you know, what is so important when we look at the idea of emotional intelligence is that we want our teams to perform, right? Our job as a leader is to pull the greatness out of them. And we can do that better when they are connecting to us as a human. And so when we are approaching them and remembering that they are also a human that has a life outside of work, and we're asking about what's happening at home, what's happening at dinner, they are connecting to us, and then they're willing to go that extra mile. They're willing to pick up the napkin that's on the ground that every other person has stepped over and not picked up. They're willing to go that extra step to provide that great member experience. So that's, you know, one of the benefits that I've seen working with different private clubs who have embraced emotional intelligence. But I want to hear from you, Kelly. You know, what are some benefits that you've experienced yourself, your club, from emotional intelligence?
So I think as I've gotten through my EQ journey, I think self-awareness was really a challenge for me because, again, you're so consumed with reading what other people want or need from you and then kind of learning to adapt yourself to that. And initially, you know, to Scott's point, back when we were learning to be leaders, you were adaptable. You needed to be adaptable. Okay, what does the person that you're talking to need? You need to be that person. We may have gotten a little too far into that. So realizing what you need as a person, you know, they say we all flew here, and it's a cliche, but it's, you know, the oxygen mask drops down, you put it on yourself first before you help the next person. What is fulfilling for you? What do you need? And if you don't know what you need and you're constantly trying to be a chameleon to you know, meet other people's needs, you're not ever truly making genuine connections. And that's where I felt like I was a good person. I felt like I cared about my team, but I felt like maybe some of those genuine connections weren't happening. I didn't feel like I was present because, you know, in my mind, I'm like, okay, I have to say this and be this person and be this way, and this is what they expect from me. And whether it's in the boardroom or, you know, I was a chef for a long time. So again, even though I was a woman, you didn't talk about emotion. And actually we were told, you know, kind of taught to don't be emotional, don't cry. Oh God, don't cry. Don't be emotional. Put that kind of, you know, push that down. So it was really kind of going through that journey that it's okay to be emotional. I think we have emotions and that's healthy. I think that's why we are all great at what we do. Passion is an emotion. So, you know, sometimes we think emotional is hysterical and unreasonable, but we are all passionate. And that's why we're great. And that's why we're here, you know, on the last day towards the last session, still learning. So I appreciate that. But I think it just made those connections stronger. I think my spouse would attest to that. He flew across the country to be here with me. My friends would attest to that. My teammates would. So it's the beauty of EQ is it doesn't just make you a better leader, it makes you a better person. Stronger relationships, better. I'm more present with my children. So it's really been a full circle journey.
Great. And you know, one of the things that you mentioned is that it's okay to recognize our emotions, that they're part of our experience. And that's really when we look at the first pillar of EQ, self-awareness, what we need to do to embrace EQ. We want to look at our emotions not as something bad or good, but as data, as my Harvard professor calls it, or as a message. You know, I'm feeling excited right now. What does that say about the work that I'm doing? Or I'm feeling guilt right now. What does that say about the change that I want to make? Or I'm feeling angry right now. What does that say about the boundary that I want to put in place or the stand that I want to take? And using our emotions, when we actually listen to them, it gives us data on the next action that we should take for ourselves and as a team with our team. You know, one of the things that we find from looking at EQ data is that a lot of tough conversations aren't happening. A lot of managers are not comfortable having conflict or accountability conversations with their team. I don't have that data with me on the slides today, but it's around 80% of people avoid conflict at work as often as they possibly can. And what this creates from a data from Learning in Action study is that we waste 2.8 hours per week avoiding conflict. You know, someone's doing extra work. The meeting after the meeting is taking place. People are ruminating about it. And so what we want to do as we build our emotional intelligence is, and we have those feelings come up, is we want to step forward and have the tools to be able to neutrally, without emotion, speak to the neutral facts and address them so that we can shift the behavior of our team and nip the conflict in the bud so that we can go forward with what we have to do with all the things that we have on our to-do list. And so what I want to talk through is Kelly shared a lot of the benefits that she has experienced with emotional intelligence. I want to share just a few with all of you. This is data from places like Harvard and Yale, Learning in Action, and HR experts. And what they have found studying emotional intelligence really the last few decades is that people who use EQ are 127% more productive. They bring in 2 times the revenue over their average EQ counterpart if they have a sales-related job. People who work for a high EQ manager are 400% less likely to leave their job. And this is a stat that I know everyone in this room cares about. Being in hospitality, we already have one of the highest rates of turnover of any other industry out there. And of course, when we have the team members that we talked about that are creating that great experience for their coworkers and our members, we of course want to keep them on board, and EQ can clearly help with that.
Sarah, I just want everyone in the room to look at that number. We all know how hard the labor market is. That's what sold me on what I'm doing. Seriously, if I can get a 400% return on what I'm doing, hands down, that's where the payoff comes in.
Absolutely, yes, yes. People who work for a high EQ manager are also 50% more inspired. We have more generations in the workforce than ever before. We have more diversity in the workforce than ever before. And as you are all experiencing, a lot of the younger generations, they don't want to just come to work for a paycheck anymore. They want to align their identity with a mission, a purpose, bigger than their paycheck. Or if it is paycheck related, what is it that that paycheck does for us? And part of EQ is understanding that for each and every one of the employees that reports to you so that you can pull that greatness out of them versus fearing or shaming them into showing up with high performance at your club. A couple more stats and then we'll move on. We know that high EQ cultures are negatively correlated to burnout. Very important in this industry where we're already working a lot more hours than a lot of other industries and where expectations are very high of us. There are a 50% decrease in accidents that result in lost time at work in high EQ cultures. And one that's very important to everyone here in this room, high EQ cultures are also related to having a stronger customer and member experience because you have those team members that are going above and beyond and noticing when there's an opportunity to turn an uh-oh into an aha, as I like to explain it. And so with this, let's look at each of the 4 pillars of EQ very, very briefly. We have self-awareness, which is understanding yourself, knowing your strengths, your weaknesses, your values, and your emotional vocabulary, being able to state how you are actually feeling so that you can take action on it. The second pillar of EQ, once we understand ourselves, is self-management. And this is where we are choosing productive behaviors. We are maximizing our potential. We are having balance even in a job that requires us to work a lot of hours, and we're having resilience to step back up when adversity happens to us. As we manage ourselves, we then move into others' awareness, which is being able to put ourselves into someone else's shoes. It's having empathy. It is understanding the dynamics and the politics of your club so that you are operating within those dynamics versus fighting against them. And then finally, once we know and manage ourselves and we understand others, we can move into that final pillar of EQ, which is relationship management. This is where the magic of leadership happens. This is where you are influencing others, you are mentoring and coaching, you are having those tough love conversations rather than avoiding the conflict that we talked about. And what I'd like to ask all of you in the audience, based on this brief overview of the 4 pillars of emotional intelligence, which pillar is the hardest one for you to get right? Which one is most challenging for you? So if you could go back to let me go back to the poll slide. Thank you for bearing with us with the technical challenges that we had getting this set up. But if you could go back to the poll slide and let us know which pillar is the biggest challenge area for you, that would be great. Okay, so far, and this isn't quite shocking to me, so far self-management is winning at about 40%. And then the other 3 are pretty even. Relationship management, the final pillar, is at about 25%. So we're looking at self-management being the most challenging for those in this room, and then relationship management and others awareness kind of tying for second place. And so I want to pose this question to you, Kelly. Which pillar has been the most challenging for you, and how have you then tackled that during your journey?
Well, I'm going to speak to the crowd because it's been self-management. Self-awareness is obviously the first step. But I think we're all, we know how we're wired. We know what we need to do. When you want to lose weight, you eat healthy and you go to the gym, and you know the tools, you know what you need to do. But do you do it every day? Do you eat the candy bar? Do you skip the gym? So it's easy to know what needs to be done. And I think that's where I got to, is I knew, okay, I need to fill my cup first. I need to make time for me. And how do I balance that? And we don't always make that an important thing. So last year I started a journey, I'll tell a story, where, I was always I was an advocate for my team. I was like, okay, you guys, work-life balance. I don't want to see you here all the time. Make sure you're working efficiently. Make sure that you have time at home with your family, your friends, your hobbies. And I had a team member who I had built a good relationship with, and she came to me and she said, can I talk to you? And I said, yeah, what's going on? And she said, it's great that you promote and support all of us. You are not doing that for yourself. She's like, you're here first thing in the morning. You're sometimes way late. You're the last one out sometimes. You're preaching this thing, but we're watching you. And if we want to be successful, it's not attainable. And so basically I was being a hypocrite. And that was a big aha moment for me. And I said, you know what? You're right. And so I knew what I wanted to do and I knew what I needed to do. So now I cycle every morning, 15 miles every morning before I even go into work. And it puts me in the office later. And there was some guilt associated with that. I think we've all experienced that guilt, right? We should be in the office when we're at home, and we should be at home when we're in the office. And there's that balance. But I will tell you, my team now knows the mornings that I don't cycle, because they're like, you're a whole different person. Your energy, your just kind of whole demeanor, you need to fill your cup. And again, it's a bit of a cliche. Fill your cup before you can fill everyone else's. And again, it's not perfect. It's a day-to-day, month-to-month. But self-management is, and you have to give yourself grace. When you're on a diet and you eat the candy bar, or you skip the gym, it's not all bets are off. The next day you start again. This journey is very similar to that. So just make sure you're giving yourself grace through that process, please.
Yeah, and I like to look at myself, because I've also struggled with the self-management, and most people that I work with do, right? We know that we should get a good night's sleep. We know we should eat well. We know we should exercise. We know we should learn how to relax. But it's really hard for us. And I used to have a hard time, shutting my mind down at the end of the day and just sitting and watching TV, because I felt like I always had more things to do. There were always things on my to-do list, and I really wanted to be productive. And one of my mentors helped me to understand that I'm like a race car. And, I go out on the racetrack and I give it my all and I go as fast as I can and I do my best. But when a pit stop comes up, what do? I go to the pit stop and I get the gas put in my tank and my tires filled, and I do those things. I get the things fixed, because that is part of high performance. It helped me to recognize that the pit stops, the self-management, is productivity. And without that, I can push and push, but I'm eventually going to burn out and knock myself down to the ground, which isn't productive. I wanted to come back to something that you said about giving yourself grace, because Jeff, you've talked about this as we were preparing for this panel. So share a little bit about what that means to you and how you've applied that on your journey.
As a recovering perfectionist, grace is an interesting word. It's not one it is every year I do a word of the year. I'm going to try to focus on that word. And in 2024, it's grace. And that, to me, like, for people that know me, like, or knew the former me, that is not something that I would ever do. And we got to, as managers, give ourselves a break, right? We are not perfect. Clubs are messy. Life is messy, right? If you don't give yourself a break, you will burn out, and your staff will retreat, and you'll have turnover, and everything will become harder and harder. And if you don't give yourself a break, you will burn out, and you will lose everything that you have. I think when you give yourself a break, you allow yourself more time to breathe. You allow yourself to be more present. I find myself being more present with my kids, which is a big thing for me, and being more present at work. And, to just touch on one of Kelly's points, that your other server came up to you and said, you're not practicing what you preach. I'm up in Boston. My clubhouse opened last night for the season, and I'm here. And that is such a good thing and not a bad thing. And 2 years ago, I would have never been able to be here. I would have skipped conference. I wouldn't have come. I would have just stayed there, and I would have stressed out the whole week. And guess what happened? I called this morning. Everything was fine, and it was great. And my team members are actually better for it. They're growing as leaders. They're growing. They're leading themselves. They're leading each other. I have a really long tenured staff. I had my turnover rate in 2023, 0. I did not lose one employee. That says a lot about a lot of things, but it says a lot about that my staff loves each other, and they take care of each other. And all I got was messages of, like, have a good time. Make sure that you learn, and, like, don't worry about the club. We got it. And it's a hard thing to do as a recovering perfectionist, but, like, you do the best you can to try to stay present. And I'm so glad that I'm here versus there, and they're glad for me that I'm here too. I think out of the pillars, self-awareness, you can't do the others before you become vulnerable with yourself and become self-aware. You can't do anything else. You can't do self-management until you're aware of your own feelings and how you can manage them, how you can learn how to not react and, think through your decisions before you do it. And making people feel seen and heard and understood is huge, but you can't do any of that until you're self-aware.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we don't know if we're reacting. If we're reacting, we don't know if others aren't feeling heard if we aren't first self-aware. And let's dive into this first pillar then just a little bit more. And Scott, I wanted to ask you, how did you go about uncovering your blind spots? Because this is really one of the key aspects of self-awareness is we need someone else to hold up the mirror for us. We need other people to help us see the blind spots because they are blind spots. So how did you go about that process, and what did you learn and shift through that?
Well, I met with you for a year. That helped. No. So blind spots for me really was a word I hadn't heard prior to 2 years ago. I'm like, well, I'm doing everything great. I got a good club job, and things must be going well because they keep paying me and I keep showing up, right? So I realized that, as Jeff and Kelly have mentioned, I wasn't happy. I was doing the job. I was pretty successful, and I just wasn't happy coming to work. And it's something that made me understand it's not just my professional life, but also my personal life had to change. I had to realize and become self-aware that I was not making good decisions. I was not making good long-term decisions for myself, my family, my partner, and really until I got myself straightened out outside of work, I wasn't going to be a good manager to my team. I'm fortunate that we are building a good team after being closed for 2 years. And the people that I have on our team understand what my blind spots are, understand the challenges because I share with them. There is not a topic that's off limits when we talk about our development, both in the business side of it, but also in the personal growth side of what we do at the Beach Club. And that's tough. It's tough because some people aren't satisfied working in the position they're in, and there may not be another position at the Beach Club. but Naples is small enough, we'll help them find another position in Naples. I'm fortunate that I have one of my team members here who joined us, Andrew. Andrew has been a great partner in this and building our team. We went from 8 employees, now we're up to 85 in about 60 days. That's how quickly we were able to gear up and get going. So if you talk about blind spots that I have and areas where I can improve, it's the personal life coming together with a professional life to be the full package. I think Jeff and Kelly, you guys probably agree with that, and as you spoke to it, so.
Thank you. And I want to throw a question to the panel that came up in the roundtable discussion that I led yesterday and has come up a lot in conversations this week is, we are talking about self-awareness. We understand that it's important. And also, as we're helping our team to build their own emotional intelligence, whether that's our staff or our leaders, how can we help our own staff, our own leaders to build their self-awareness? So I'll share a couple things and give you a moment to think about that as well. But a lot of the personality assessments, we've heard about the predictive index and Myers-Briggs and DISC, whatever it is, any of those personality assessments, when we take them and we get them back, that gives us some feedback about ourselves. That's a simple way to start knowing more about who we are. I also mentioned earlier that we want to create a culture of feedback. And part of my own journey is that I used to be a yoga teacher before I started teaching emotional intelligence. And feedback was a system, a process that was part of our yoga studio. Every time that I taught and I had another yoga teacher that took my class, it was required for that other teacher to give me feedback on my class. So it was expected. And because the feedback was expected, it lowered my defensiveness wall that is natural for all of us humans. We're a social tribe species, so we naturally get defensive when people try to give us correction or feedback. But because it was expected in a regular part of our culture, I was more open to it. We got better at sharing it, and it was an easier conversation. And so I just wonder if you have anything else that you can add on how you help your teams to build their self-awareness.
So, Sarah, I think it comes hand in hand as we become more aware. And again, I found myself being vastly more present. I was able to pick up on an attitude or just a sense that, something wasn't right with one of my team members. And instead of, calling them out or saying, hey, I think this might be happening, I would call them into my office and say, what's going on today? Why, oh, what do you mean? I'm like, well, you don't seem yourself. And then they would start to, and you work through and you build those relationships where they feel they can open up to you. And then they were like, my dog just died. And I sat in the office and I actually cried. And this is where you're not supposed to cry. And I cried with them because we've all experienced that. And it was emotional and it was genuine. And I think, again, self-awareness makes us have more genuine interactions. And I wasn't afraid to be vulnerable. I wasn't afraid to cry with her because she was experiencing that and I had experienced it, and it was painful. And she would not have opened up. She was just off that day. And I would have just thought, going back to Scott's, our old mentality as a manager, well, geez, she's really in a bad mood today and I'm not going to get a lot of work out of her. And it was like, nope, what's going on? What's wrong? Talk to me. Feel like you can, and I think that opening that communication, now they come to me without me going, hey, what's going on today? They'll come in and be like, I'm having a bad day. I'm off. I'm here. I'm going to do my work, but I'm just not, can we talk? And some people, you have to realize some of the people that work with you don't have that other outlet. Like you might be their confidant, their friend, their coach, their whatever. They might not have that outside. So it's like a safe place. Be their safe place. That's part of your job as a leader, just as it is to teach them finance and food and beverage and COGS, right? It's right up there.
And part of that is listening and then asking the question, how can I support you? Because sometimes they just need to vent and share, and sometimes they might need a solution or help. And so that's a great, little tool that we can keep in our EQ toolbox is, how can I support you? Or what does support look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more, Kelly. I think when you become more self-aware and you become more vulnerable with yourself, and people see it and you lead by example, boy, that's powerful. I mean, I had, as I've been going through my journey and changing, literally changing as a person, like I had one of my long-term front of the house people she's awesome, but she goes like this, right? And she came to me and she goes, what are you doing? Because you're not the same person that you were when you got here. And like, when you lead like that, it makes other people want to follow you. And she started asking me like, well, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, this is what you need to focus on. You need to listen more. You need to not react. You need, like some of those, you become more of a teacher than you do anything else. And it goes against everything we learned when we started in the business, right? Everything we learned was to just like do the job and like, oh, she must be having a bad day. I can't tell you how many times I've said that. She must be having a bad day. I got to leave her alone. It's like now I call her in and I listen. And sometimes you just have to be like sometimes a sounding board for people. And then when you get the feedback, again, going back to feedback, that someone is sitting there and saying, you've changed. You're better. You're a better person. Like, what are you doing? And then you can help them be a better person. And I think ultimately that's our goal as leaders, is to make people around us better.
Absolutely. So I want to jump to another polling question. Let me get us back to that polling slide. We sort of touched on this topic of vulnerability. And it is something that is required of us if we are going to connect with other people. And I think I just maybe gave away some of the answers to this. But I'm curious, on the polling question, do you view vulnerability as a strength or as a weakness in club management? And if we look at the definition of vulnerability, because that would be helpful, really vulnerability theoretically means opening yourself up to judgment from others, right? It means that we can be judged by others if we are vulnerable. So is it a strength or a weakness in club management? And what we're seeing from the audience is that 68% is saying that it's a strength when used with intention. And we've got about 23% saying it's a strength. So any comments on that from the panel?
Yeah, I think the part about intention is really important, because then it can come off as fake if it's not really intentional. Vulnerability in general. I mean, you have to feel like you have to feel like you really, like you sit in that room with someone and they're unloading on you, and you have to really be open to hearing it and being there. And if it doesn't feel real, then it's just not, it's actually worse, right? So the intention piece makes a lot of sense that it's so high on the poll.
And that's requiring us to step into the third pillar of EQ, which is others awareness, and have empathy. Because to have empathy, we might not be experiencing the same dog dying or the same exact experience, but we have to find that place in ourselves that has had that similar feeling before. We have to go there so that we can be with the person that's there with us. And that's hard and that takes skill, but that is essentially one of the pieces of empathy. And Scott, were you going to add on to this conversation?
Yeah, I agree with Jeff and Sarah. I have the worst poker face in Las Vegas. I can't fake being compassionate or caring about somebody. And that's changed probably in the last year and a half. And people know when I'm just asking them questions to ask questions. So you really can't fake that.
Yes, it has to be genuine. And so I'm looking at the time, and I want to move into being very tangible about how we can help others to increase their own emotional intelligence. And so, Kelly, I'll direct this question to you to start with, but what resources or techniques do you recommend or did you use to improve your emotional intelligence that we haven't talked about yet?
So I'm going to plug Sarah's book at the end, but I'm going to plug this book. It's The Magic, and that was massively helpful in this entire journey. And for those of you that haven't read it, it's so many steps, and you do one step each day consistently. The one I'll touch on is gratitude journaling. And so I wake up every morning now and I don't doom scroll right through Facebook. I gratitude journal. And when you gratitude journal, and it was a process, because you're like, I'm going to run out of things to be grateful for. I was grateful I woke up this morning. I was grateful, and they could be silly things, but sometimes it's even maybe a bad experience. I was grateful that happened because it made me the person I am today, or it made me, it put me here. So being grateful, starting off the day grateful, stuff like I think you were saying it, Jeff, life's hard, right? Club management's hard. Things are hard. But if you start with a grateful heart, every morning you're going to find that, oh, well, there's traffic today. Oh, well, I'm not in the accident that caused the traffic. Try to spin it and try to spin your mindset. And I think the gratitude journaling was huge, because again, things are going to happen, and you spin that. And I feel like that has been the best part for me. And then journaling my emotions. Like, again, we're human, right? So we know the steps, we know what we're supposed to do. And every now and again, you still blow up at your now very angsty 13-year-old who is smarter than you somehow, right? In his 13 years of life. And then I go and I take a moment and I go and I journal and I write it down and I'm like, why did that happen? Why did I react that way? I knew I shouldn't have reacted that way. Now I need to go apologize. And, and so we're a work in progress, right? We're all a work in progress.
And a lot of what you just demonstrated are pieces of that self-management bucket of emotional intelligence. There's a lot of science research that backs up the positivity that comes from a gratitude practice, and also journaling to get our emotions, to get our thoughts out on paper. It gives it an outlet, so they're not swimming around in our head like a head hurricane, as I call them, and causing us to be distracted from what's really happening in front of us. So thank you for sharing that. And was the book called The Magic? Is that what it was?
The Magic, yes. And Sarah's book is The Balanced Life Blueprint. By the way, I just want to plug that a few more times. That's been massively helpful as well.
Yes, it just came out on February 18th, so I'm still excited about the launch, and it's been a bestseller and tons of support. So yes, please, if this topic interests you, it's about my journey through emotional intelligence and how I got to where I am today. Thank you.
Both The Magic and Sarah's book are required reading for club managers. So there you go. And I have a magic rock beside my bed. Yeah.
Yeah. So now you have to get the book because you're gonna have no idea what we're talking about. Yeah. The magic rock.
So I'll just add on to Kelly. I think part of the self-management piece of it is to, I started journaling like 2 years ago, and I think what I try to focus on the management side of it is to have a really, really solid morning routine. And when you do that, like you cycle 16 miles every day or whatever that might be, like for me, I get up very early every day. I go walk, I journal. And by the time my kids are up, and they're 10 and 6, and so they're up pretty early, so that means I'm up even earlier than that. By the time I'm up, I'm present with them. And when one of them blows up, I'm able to get down to their level and be able to say, it sounds like you're mad about this, but you're really not. You're really mad about something else, right? And there's no way I could have done that before. And I think it starts with realizing what's going to work for you to get on a really, really good morning routine to get yourself set up for your day so that you can be the best version of yourself. That's the self-management part for me.
Absolutely, so important. And we know as leaders that our energy spills out to our team, that spills out to the member experience. So it's really a non-negotiable for us as leaders. So we are getting closer to the end of our time together. I have a couple questions on the app. If you would like to ask the panel a question though, you can raise your hand and I'll call on you, or you can type it into the app. In the meantime, I'm going to read one of the questions here that was submitted. It says, I'm self-aware, I see it and I've been told that. I am others aware too, but I am often misunderstood by others. And I think this is because of maybe ADHD or anxiety. Any thoughts on why I feel often misunderstood by others? What could be the culprit for that?
So I think sometimes it's perception. And I think because, again, being a female chef in my career, I was very assertive. And it was like, I used to have a note on my desk that said, be brief, be bright, be gone. Obviously, I was very early on in my EQ journey at that point. But, having those conversations where you say, I don't think we're connecting. And again, the higher your EQ level is, and, you may still be on your journey, you're going to see that their face, if you're communicating and it's, you're putting that message out, but it's not being received correctly, you'll see, like, Scott says with the poker face, like they're going to make a face or they're going to drift off. Bring it back. Say, I don't feel like we're connecting. Why is that? This is what I'm trying to say. Maybe it's not coming across that way. And then try to kind of have your EQ evolution together through that situation.
To that question, the person with ADHD, that was the question? Yeah. So my wife has ADHD. And she tells me often that she feels misunderstood. So it's a very pointed question. What you can do, if you're the person without ADHD and the person that's trying to, get your EQ journey going, you have to realize that the reason why people do things has nothing to do with you. Right? Has nothing to do with you. If she reacts to me, that has nothing to do with me. But how I react is everything. You have to be very, very intentional about how you handle those situations. So for the person that feels, misunderstood, I feel you and I understand. Hopefully someone or some of your staff can be aware enough to be able to kind of bring you back, because it's a tough dynamic to be in. But I try to be in a situation where all right, well, tell me what it's kind of like with your kids. It sounds like you're upset about this, but I think you might be upset about something else. Is that right? And then you could kind of bring it back.
Yeah, a lot of the strategy of emotional intelligence is communicating about the communication and validating what the person is saying and making sure that we're on the same page and clearing up that misunderstanding, addressing it versus thinking about it. So we have a couple questions that have been upvoted by the audience. The top one right now is, any strategies to deal with manipulators, specifically an employee who knows how to fake authenticity effectively and then positions themselves to gain trust? And we have 7 people voted this one to the top of the list. So do you want me to read it again, or do you want to take it, Scott?
Oh, I got this one.
Okay, good.
So I've had this happen twice to me. And, in the last year and a half, like I said, being more emotionally forward, empathetic, understanding, I put myself out there, and that's not something I usually do. Like literally, I go to I would never tell anyone where I lived or, if I had a wife or anything like that. Like I'd be so detached from work. And now, like I said, I share, anybody has a question, I'll share it with you. I don't really care. But I got burned so bad by this one employee that I thought I was mentoring, helping, and they were all into it. And literally, they would leave the office that we were working in, go and tell the other staff, he's full of, and just absolutely under the bus. There'd be tire tracks over my back. And, I thought I was helping this person so much. And it's going to happen. If you put yourself out there, there are people who do not respect you and do not trust in the path forward. It's going to happen. You have to understand that it's going to happen. And again, that person is no longer with our organization, but that was their choice, not mine, because it just wasn't working out. But you have to face it. It's going to happen. And then you have that tough conversation with that individual. Either you're on our bus or you should probably get on a different bus.
Don't let it stop you from helping somebody else. I know right after that, if I had walked up to Scott and was like, hey, can I be mentored? But he'd probably be like, no, absolutely. You get burned, and you have that acclimation period where always go into it with good intentions. Cause like Sarah said, people do things that has nothing to do with you. It wasn't that Scott was a bad mentor or that he was doing something wrong. That person maybe just wasn't at that level of their life where they wanted that. So just make because 3 times out of 4, you're going to help somebody. That 4th person, well, they're on a different journey, but don't stop it from helping other people.
Yeah, I think we've all been burned. Scott's story it resonates because we've all been in that situation. And I think it takes it back to, when you have that manipulator, right, that the way they act has nothing to do with you. You have to, and what you have to do is you have to forgive them. You have to let it go. And, remove them from the organization, because obviously that's toxic, but forgive it, let it go. Don't let it hang on you, because you're just going to sit there and you're going to have this that guy burned me. And if you keep talking about it, it just lives. You got to let it go. You got to forgive. It takes a lot of courage to get there, to actually forgive someone, but you got to do it.
And so that's going to lead into our final closing statements, because we've got about 2 minutes left. So I want to ask each of you, what is your final thought that you want to leave with our wonderful audience? Or if you want to answer a different question, what would you tell yourself 10 years ago about your EQ journey? So either final thought for the audience or advice that you would give to yourself 10 years ago. We have Kelly taking it first.
Mine will be give yourself permission to enjoy whatever stage you're at right now. Give yourself permission and praise yourself for being in this class today. This might be the first step. You may have a lofty journey ahead that you're trying to get to, but try to sit in the journey. Try to be present in the wins and cherish those. Right? Don't constantly be looking ahead. Don't look behind. Be present in the win. Give yourself, even if it's a little win.
I would say give yourself a break, right? If I could go back and tell my 10 years ago self, I've made so many mistakes, and If I could go back and change things, maybe I would, but I know I can't. You gotta let it go. Give yourself a break, give yourself grace. You're gonna be a better person for it. You'll be a better manager. It just comes like automatically, but more importantly, you're gonna be a better person for your family and for yourself. So just give yourself a break.
And my closing thought that I want to add to that we didn't get into, but once we get to that relationship management piece and we start having those conversations that shift unproductive behavior, it's a lot of those things that we're hard on ourselves for. It's a lot of our own mistakes and failures that we can actually use to break down that barrier of connection with someone else. Say, hey, I made a mistake in the past. Hey, this is what I did. And that helps to lower their defensiveness and be able to connect and to help them to choose a more productive behavior. So thank you. And Scott, final words. Okay, all right. Well, thank you, everyone. We're up here if you have some more questions. And take this out and embrace emotional intelligence. Thank you so much.